All right, you ready?
I'm ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Blair on the Air podcast. I am your host, violinist Daniel Blair. I teach music here at Blair Academy for the Arts. And I am joined by my friend, the very talented multi-instrumentalist, Eastman Mann.
Thank you.
You get the applause of one person. I've known Stephen, I think we're going on close to 10-ish years.
Really? Yeah.
I think we're somewhere there, and you have a big interest in business that we've connected on. Mm-hmm. You currently preside over a very impressive worship arts, tech, and production program over at Grace Fellowship Church, which is my church, and I serve on that worship team. So I thought we could use today to get to know you a little better.
Yeah.
So a lot of people see you only on the stage.
Right.
And find out some cool tips and tricks, maybe some funny stories. I'm sure everything always goes perfect.
Always.
With worship.
All the time.
But yeah, man, welcome. So,
yeah, thanks.
I kind of have just a few general ideas to talk about, but I thought we could hear more about your musical journey.
Okay.
So the first things I heard about you were your guitar skills, but that's not where it all started. So what's the first instrument you picked up, and how did you land where you are now?
My first instrument was actually harmonica. Believe it or not. So not many people can claim harmonica. Well, that was second. That was next. Okay. So when I was a kid, I would always play drum beats like in my mouth. Just
kind of like beatboxing
or beatboxing, and then like hitting the table. So I love drums. And my grandfather got me a harmonica, so I went with that for a little bit, and then wanted to go into drums. And then
were you playing songs with the harmonica?
Yeah, I still can. I haven't.
You can like bend the notes and all that stuff.
Yeah, kind of.
I can't do that one.
Yeah, I have a moderate range of skill there, but I
can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I can still play them. And with drums, when I was I guess was it middle school, my parents got me a drum kit for Christmas. It was downstairs. I got like the drumsticks next to the stocking, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
So I started drums. So that was definitely my first.
How old were you with drums?
Probably, I don't remember, maybe 11, 12.
Okay.
Around there.
Okay, so you weren't 3 years old religiously in a place like Blair Academy or whatever. You are just doing it for fun.
The music was in our family. So my oldest brother was a piano virtuoso, and so we grew up with music, but I didn't play anything until 12 or 13.
Now, where did he study? Was that a lot of self-taught, or was he studying pretty formally?
He studied more formally and as a kid, and then actually went to Eastman School of Music.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's my dream school. Like up in Rochester?
So he got a scholarship there.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, my favorite violin place in the whole world is Stringhouse in New York. They service a lot of Eastman stuff.
He was there.
I mean, we've probably moved 50 or 60 violins and cellos for him or something.
That's awesome.
Dude, Eastman
is
so awesome.
Yeah. So he was at Eastman, and then
for undergrad?
Undergrad, and for a couple years, and then he went to USC in Southern California.
Call him, bring him out. So he studied piano performance at Eastman, or what he studied?
No, well, he studied film scoring.
Okay.
So
I'm connecting the dots now. I knew you had a brother that did film scoring.
Yeah.
You should name drop Eastman more often.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
I
was saving it for this. So Eastman, then USC, and then he was in that industry for a while, and then kind of moved on to some other things. But
so from that perspective, and we've talked about this before, a lot of people love movie themes and kind of film scoring as a career because it's really popular. It's attractive when you're picking a music major. What did he not like about it?
Well,
based on,
I think he loved the education and the experience of it. I think it was being in the industry and realizing, and this is true with the music industry probably as a whole, but in scoring films, there was a lot of, it just wasn't quite, I think, what he thought it would be. It wasn't just an open field of creative expression. It was a little bit more of, hey, can you get this movie to sound like this movie, but don't get us sued.
Yeah.
That type of framework instead of more of a, and it depends on the project too, and then a lot of kind of backhanded things that just exist in the industry, and so I think there's a love-hate probably, like there's a love of when he was young, like E.T., and those were all his inspirations, and music moves people in movies in different ways, and to be a part of that and creating
John
that was
Williams
awesome.
studied at Juilliard. I actually was recently going deeper into John Williams stuff.
Okay.
He was a working jazz pianist in New York in like the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
Henry Mancini, the Pink Panther guy.
Yeah.
So like he did like session work with him and stuff.
Okay.
Crazy.
Yeah.
He's 90 years old now.
Yeah, he's genius, musical genius.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. So I tell the kids, it's like, look, you can get inspiration from everywhere.
Yeah.
You might say, I don't like Mozart. I love the Star Wars themes.
Yeah.
Guess what? The guy who wrote those probably loved Mozart.
Yeah.
So it's like you get skills from everywhere.
Yeah, my guitar teacher actually told me that was one of his assignments is like go out and pick a genre of music that you don't love and learn it, because you're gonna that will transfer over into what you do like, and you'll create kind of your own. When you create your own sound and version of playing things, it's your unique combination of those types of things. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you've done some teaching as well.
Yep.
And I want to get back to moving towards your guitar. Did you ever teach many adult students?
Oh yeah.
So that's been a thing we've been running into. What have you noticed different from kids and adults in the way they approach the instrument?
This happens almost every time I get an adult. Well, I had a couple times where I had a like father and son duo.
Okay.
And every time the dad's like, "Well, son, just know this takes a long time. You're going to have to be patient with it." And there's that kind of he thinks he's just going to take off because he's the adult, he knows better.
Yeah.
And almost every time the kid just
bang,
just learns it quicker, and then the adult's trying to like catch up, and
it's like I must think harder.
Perhaps
if I think harder.
Kids have this brain that's ready to just absorb, learn, and go.
You have enthusiasm.
Yeah.
There is kind of fewer neural pathways you're having to replace. Yeah. But the adults, they overthink stuff, and they're really hard on themselves.
Self-critical, yeah.
You try to compliment them, and
that's true.
And that's not all of them, but like, gosh, it's a lot.
There's a filter of how am I doing, and how are you judging me, and how I'm playing that as a teacher I don't care about. I mean, I just want you as a student to progress and
take
have fun,
step.
And take a step and learn and have fun with it. And the people that do that progress the most because they have more fun.
So you have a team of people that you're either directly or indirectly responsible for now. Mm-hmm. As you're training them in their positions, is that a similar thing that you see? Or are adults as self-critical learning a new skill that's maybe not as expressive or artsy?
Yeah, I think adults are generally more self-critical of doing something new. So like anything that's out of your comfort zone, there's probably more of that. But like the team I'm leading now, a lot of people like, Jamie in tech, that's his, it's second nature, is driving a car for him. So it's something he's very familiar with. So it's a little different of taking someone who's brand new to something and training them in it. Yeah. But volunteers, even my volunteers have almost all of them have a musical background, so it's not completely new. They might be new to worship music and what that looks like and sounds like, and
near.
That's it. But our most recent bass player wasn't playing that style, like our style, until
Is David
2 years
the most
ago.
Recent
David,
one? Yeah, he's a lot of fun.
So
he falls into my category of like skill and chill.
Yeah, that's right.
I need those two things to make me happy.
Yeah,
that's probably underrated. Indirect. Oh, it might be direct when you're putting musicians together. If I love to worship and love to participate and feel like I can contribute, but then just there's a lot of friction with people like back in the green room in rehearsal, that would definitely more blockout dates would appear.
Yeah. For sure.
Hard to get along.
I think team structure in that, like I really feel like our team's kind of like a family, and we are in different ways. If someone gets hurt or sick, we're kind of there for each other, and there's that team culture dynamic, which is just as important as the skill or what you're producing on a Sunday.
I try to tell the kids, like, if you plant a little seed in your skill, then sometimes you automatically make friends that you didn't even have to work for.
Right.
It can be in college or it can be at your church. But sometimes if you plug into an existing thing where you pick a responsibility, you just meet the other people around.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a bigger church, you need those opportunities, like you do with small groups and all these special, even once a year events. Just a chance to not have to work so hard to say hi to someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And even awesome. Some of our staff have come from just being involved in the life of the church. Yeah. And then you get to know them through that. And it's kind of a natural onboarding process for different positions.
Doesn't seem like a crazy person. Shows up.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so going back to your development as a musician. So harmonica. Went into drums. Mm-hmm. Did you play drums with others, or was it exclusively in your basement?
So drums was at first in my basement.
And what were you playing? Were you playing worship stuff on the drums?
No, I was playing "Wind Beneath My Wings." That was like my go-to song.
Okay.
And that's what my drum teacher knew. He taught me for maybe a year. So I quickly discovered my dad's classical guitar and asked him to show me a few chords. So I still played drums, but guitar was different because it became an obsession in middle school. So I would play probably like 3 hours a day.
Yes.
All throughout. And it was not a disciplined regimen thing. It was like it was just the thing I did. I loved it. It's in
your hands.
Yeah. I just obsessed over learning it. I would listen to songs and try to hear the chord that I heard and reproduce it string by string and note by note. So I wasn't even following a book or a chord book or anything. I was just trying to get to learn this instrument that I was just kind of obsessed with. So fast forward a little bit to high school, and then that's when I started helping with worship and leading worship.
So to add vocals to guitar and stuff like that, a lot of the instrumentalists are pretty self-conscious about singing in those teenage years.
I hated singing. Hated it. I didn't. So I was in like choir and ensembles and stuff in high school, and I was part of kind of a team that sang, but I really just didn't. I mean, I didn't enjoy just my voice and a guitar until really after high school, when I wasn't part of a team, but I had to like, hey, you kind of have to sing too as you lead. I took an internship where I had to do it, and I just had to do it. Yeah. And I did it with...
Were you with kind of strangers at that internship?
No, it was at my home church.
You still knew everybody?
I still knew everyone, yeah.
That seems a little daunting. I loved playing for strangers. Playing for strangers is the best.
Yeah.
But
well, it was and worship leading is unique because you're performing in a sense, but you're also not. Like you're leading others to sing.
Yeah.
So that takes the pressure off of that part of it.
Yeah.
And I had to do like several things every week, and it became normal quickly. So it was like high school Wednesday night. We had like a young adult thing every week on Thursday night, and then Sunday morning Sunday school class. And so I started doing it just 3 or 4 times a week, and then all the fear and all the other stuff just went away. It kind of dissolved. So you just get used to it. But I never considered myself, still don't really, like a singer. It was just more of that's kind of what was required to lead worship, which I was.
I think people do that in a lot of aspects of their jobs. Yeah. Like I have to cover this within my job. We're a small company here, so it's like I don't consider myself a custodian, but I've cleaned a lot of bathrooms.
Yeah, right.
And I guess there's just a huge gambit for that.
Sure. Yeah, it was more out of necessity to do that part of it. But
then you went to college at Wake Forest, which is awesome. That's
Wake Forest.
It's a cool school. I was trying to go to the medical school at one point.
Yeah.
And I was like thinking it'd be real cool to get down that way.
Yeah, Wake Forest is an incredible school.
It was too competitive
college
for me. So.
Yeah, well, my mom worked at the medical school, which helps.
Yeah, I should have called her.
That's the secret. You got to,
Was I still applying when I met you?
Yeah,
Some missed opportunity.
But it was in town. I grew up in Winston-Salem, and then so I was still in town. Pros and cons to that, but I was able to attend college there and still do the internship thing at my church.
So you were really consistent with that.
Yeah.
And you had responsibilities and all that. What did you study in school?
So I studied business. That was my major. I didn't have a minor. But basically, college was crazy. I mean, I was just busy constantly. And that internship turned into also leading our first contemporary service at the church. And so
at the church up until then, what kind of stuff were you playing?
What do you mean, at the church?
Like during your internship prior to, I guess, the contemporary stuff. Was it just more
so that it was the same type of contemporary style. It was just me and a guitar.
Okay.
That versus a band leading on Sunday.
Yeah.
And it's a large church. Like in its heyday, it was probably 4,000 or 5,000 people.
Yeah. Big enough to get lost in.
Yeah, that's right. But you felt like you knew everyone. But it was yeah, I was in college, I think as a junior when we started our contemporary service in the gym. And it started with a bang. I mean, there were a lot of people and a big setup and all that sort of thing too. So I was leading that service on Sunday morning, and then leading our youth on Wednesday night, and then leading an on-campus ministry also Wednesday night at like 10.
You were good with all this volume?
Teaching guitar lessons during the week, and then of course school.
Yeah,
so college was crazy.
Like a lot.
Yeah, I didn't sleep a lot in college.
And you did that. What caused you to keep all those responsibilities? Was it kind of all or nothing? Was that the opportunity in front of you?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it too. It was just kind of it's interesting, like the musical part was more of during the week and what I was doing with my free time, and then the business learning part was kind of the school concentration. So it kind of created a balance, I guess.
You met some cool people, I think, while you're in there.
Yeah. Do you have someone in mind that you're
it just seems like everything we talk about,
just like a
not everything, you're just like, there's this so-and-so that does all these financial analysis, or this person's in this famous band, or this.
Wake Forest was such an interesting place because you had people from all over. Like, no one is from Winston. I was one of the few who were, but a lot of people come in. Chris Paul actually went to Wake Forest.
Basketball?
He's a year, So we went to the same high school,
so
which
it was
crazy.
Like,
but he ended up
hype.
He wasn't who they know now as Chris Paul, but he was still like obviously really good. So we went to the same high school and college.
That's awesome.
But some of the other people that
who's the famous people either that you know or that were affiliated with your schools?
So a few. One is do you remember Minkus in Boy Meets World?
I remember Boy Meets World.
He was kind of the nerd character. So he went to Wake Forest. So I met him there. One of my good buddies is a businessman now. He's like an investor guy. I think he has kind of operations in Singapore and China, and just like managing a massive amount of funds. But like we were, we connected in college. We actually almost started a car wash together. I don't know if I've told you that.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Out of college. That's when I was trying to figure
out. You've done a lot of business stuff, I feel like, in terms of creating something that's not there and getting a product ready. And,
and that's part of my wiring too. I love that type of, I love the business side of things, especially starting like entrepreneurship. And just seeing, starting something, meeting a need and seeing where it can go. So I kind of always had that tension of like, do I do that or do I do music? Which path? Because
the door was open for multiple ways when you're getting out of college.
And I had some cool musical experiences out of college and some cool business opportunities, and some of them worked out and some of them didn't. So I think kind of some of those opportunities guided me to where I am now, and feeling like leading worship is not a short-term means to an end to somewhere else, and it's not a...
Do you see that? Is that common?
Oh, super common.
So what would that path look like for someone who's it's not you?
If you think about music and playing professionally, making a living, if you've tried it, it's difficult to, one, just make a living at that. And I have some friends in Nashville, and I was thinking about trying it, like moving to Nashville, being a studio musician, or being in a band. Had some buddies who were gig life. So I have a really cool experience. Right, it was maybe a year after I graduated. I played in high school with the band that's now Building 429, which is a Christian band. They're still touring and still going, which is amazing.
They're with Jeremy Camp.
So they've toured with everybody, but we played. I mean, this was the late '90s, so that was like '99, 2000. They went off to do the band thing, and then I went off to college. And then after college, Jason Roy, who's a part of that band,
he's got a testimonial on your site, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Stephen teaches a lot of people how to get started on the guitar.
But he gave me a call and said there's an opportunity to be a guitarist in a band called Sonic Flood.
Oh, nice!
Which was they were big in the late '90s. So anyway, we worked all that out. I tried to learn as much music as I could to audition, and it turned out they had a gig that weekend. So he said, "Here, learn all the music, and then here's a band that's going to open for them. Can you be their guitarist in the band? I was like, sure. So it was that weekend. So I was just like charting stuff. And
and this is totally normal. Like that's literally how it happens.
It's crazy.
You might get nothing and you're playing for tips and little things.
And you don't know.
And all of a sudden it's like, hey, we got a thing and you learn a whole set by 2 days. Maybe it doesn't even work out. That is,
it was fast.
It feels like everyone I know has a similar version, sometimes multiple times.
And it was, I didn't know I didn't know what the audition looked like. I didn't know what this gig looked like. It was like, come to Nashville and we're going to hop on a bus. So drive to Nashville, and then we go to sound check with the big Nashville studio place. And then I start playing with start learning the stuff with Everlife, who's going to open like tomorrow. So we do our thing there, and then we hop on a tour bus that just came off a Sting's tour.
Did you have all your gear?
Tour bus.
Like, did you have?
So at that point, I hadn't really collected a lot of gear, so I was actually borrowing. I rented a Vox, AC30, when I was in Nashville, and then I had a buddy who was just a guitar.
We all have those.
Guru, who's like, here you go.
I got stuff.
So I kind of pieced together some stuff for it. I didn't have money enough to get like a lot of cool stuff, but anyway, we rehearsed and then hopped on a tour bus and went from Nashville to North Dakota overnight, played a show, some festival, and then hopped on the tour bus and then came back to Nashville, and it was just such a blur. But it was like, it was such a cool, like, here's what this life looks like. For me, it was kind of a pivoting point too, to know this is what it looks like, and it would be really cool for like a month, but that's just not just not me. So I kind of got
there's a few careers like that where it's in the back of everyone's or a lot of musicians' minds. They're like, this life, maybe. And then the ones who are super successful at it, it's not. They're always like, it's so good to be home.
Right. Well, it's a different kind of nomad type of life, and just busy and tour dates and sleeping on the bus, and I thought that's what I wanted to do, like when I was in middle school and high school, and I got a chance to do it for a weekend and realized that's just not. It would be, again,
it's not gonna be like sustainable.
It's just not me. It's just not a good fit long term. And so I'd had a lot of history in leading worship at my church, and then that was kind of a pivotal point, and I knew it's like, I'm still kind of like, okay, is it business or is it music?
But you can put a resume together of what you've got if you want.
Sure. And then some of those business opportunities came up, but I still felt a calling and a leading towards an opportunity with leading worship. So I started leading worship at different churches and then teaching. So I would teach during the week and then lead worship on Sundays and on Wednesdays and Fridays at different churches. So I did that for a few years.
If you like teaching, that's not a bad gig.
Really and I did. And that's part of the reason why I started my website. Was to continue to teach online, because I knew like I wanted to be full-time in ministry.
Were you website first? This is Guitar Man, right?
Yes, with 2 N's.
With 2 N's, Guitar Man.
MANN.
Yeah. So back when the ALS challenge was somewhat popular, I had challenged Steven, and this stayed in my head like to this day. It was so funny. I don't remember exactly how you worded it. But it was like, seems like you've called out my manliness in question, but I was born a man. It just made me laugh so hard. Just a little chuckle.
About that.
I know. We hadn't known each other very long either.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so let's go back off my rabbit trail. So you know that you want to do worship stuff. You've been teaching. Mm-hmm. Did you start, because I've seen a lot of your YouTube videos. And some of them are like kind of a teaser for longer instructions. Some of them are you kind of just doing a cover. Some of them are longer teaching things. Did you do YouTube first, or did you like YouTube first because I like to play worship guitar and you ended up creating Guitar Man? Or did you have this vision for Guitar Man and then you're like, let's go tell people that I'm here?
So I started Guitar Man through teaching my students. I came up with the method. At first my philosophy is like, every person's unique and different, and we're going to start with them and what they want. And then I found myself, I'm teaching the same thing up to a point, and then it branches off. So, but I have my own style of what I wanted to teach and what I wanted to get through, and then branch. So with Guitar Man, I just took that method and then created different courses around that method, and I spent probably a summer like every day just recording
Yeah.
like crazy. So created all the courses and had it ready. And then YouTube at the time, it's not what it was now. It was more of like this was like 2009.
Okay.
It's just a video platform.
It's very random.
It wasn't bought out by Google
yet. It's not
yet.
well organized.
No, it's just a place where you can upload.
It's like a server.
Yeah,
like a public
upload
server.
videos. I was like, that would be a cool thing to do. So I took some of those videos or previews and kind of just threw them up, and then I played some different fun things and threw those up, and like, we'll see what they do. You know, who knows? But people weren't making livings on YouTube.
Yeah, now you literally talk to kids. It's like, what do you want to do with your life? It's like, I want to be an influencer.
Yeah, right.
And they're right. Like, they can literally
do that.
It sounds dumb in some ways.
No, that didn't exist.
They can do it.
I mean, and you think of the technology in 2009, like iPhone was 2007 maybe. So everything was new.
Yeah.
YouTube was kind of new and being established, but I still have those videos up. It's still the same channel. So yeah, it was just more like, it's kind of the internet back then. Like, you just put it out there and just see who would check it out. I've kind of learned over time a lot about that whole teaching online process.
You've built other courses and sites and stuff too.
Right. But a lot of it is there's an interplay of figuring out what people want and what serves them, and creating your content to do that in a consistent way. So I've kind of gone from just random videos or like mini videos to more like, I want to sit down and watch this, and this is helpful to me. And I've even asked my subscribers what they enjoy, and a lot of them want to learn particular worship songs and how to play them.
Yeah.
So, and this may change, but currently my format is to kind of do a song overview, and I always chart it and talk about the flow of the song and chord changes, and then there's a run through. So you can like take everything you've learned about how to play it and then try it out with the run through, and that seems to be working pretty well. And then my actual like instruction of courses and beginner, intermediate, and electric guitar and advanced theory and all that stuff is on the site.
Yeah.
So YouTube is more of a, here's how to play this thing, the song, and the site is really designed of how to play guitar, but with worship songs as examples. That's always been, I mean, since I launched it in 2009, that's the purpose. How to play guitar with worship songs as your examples of how to
like get started quick. Get a guitar in your hands.
Yep.
You most people are going to see you with an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
So first of all, like what do you play? What's important to you to have as your setup? Because there's a lot that can either go wrong or just makes you feel comfortable. So what do you have setting up to lead worship?
As far as gear?
Yeah, gear.
So I've got 2 Taylor guitars, which have been kind of like the worship leader standard guitar for a long time. They sound great depending on what you get. So I've got their older guitars, like the electronics on them are the old style, which I actually prefer. It's an Eller Bags blended pickup. So I have a Taylor 810 and a Taylor 710 that's actually my wife's.
Yeah.
So it's actually hers, but I use that more because I like it.
Shout out.
But it's a little warmer. It's a cedar top, and it just plays better. So that's my main one. And then my 810 is a Brazilian rosewood kind of limited series. It sounds great too. I just like the other one.
Yeah.
But I'll play them both. And I'll run that into an Avalon U5, which is like a big fancy direct box that just really beefs up the signal. And then sometimes I'll go to a Boss RV5, which is like a reverb
Can
pedal.
any of that be done wirelessly, or do you kind of pick a setup or another?
You can. So that's actually how we run it. So my guitar is wireless to that rig.
Okay.
So like the wireless signal
Got
travels.
a receiver on the
Yeah,
rig.
it receives and goes into the DI, into the verb, and then into the
house stuff?
Into the house, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So, and that, that's been my setup for years and years. I'm comfortable with it. I know what my sound is, so I can dial it in pretty quick. But it's not super complicated. I mean, electric guitar, you have all kinds of
So yeah,
pedals,
you've
and
got
that's
your
part of-
acoustic going, and that's what almost everyone's going to see you. And that was probably a couple years before, but you can like straight up shred on electric.
Yeah.
Like, where did that come from? Because I would wager most people don't see you as that, because you're like very welcoming and like ding 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 ding.
And part of that too is when I'm leading worship, it's to get out of the way in a sense too. I mean, it's to lead, but also it's this paradox, I guess. You're leading people, but you also don't want to be too flashy or distracting.
There go. Well, I don't know what that's from. Have you heard this quote? There go my people. I should follow them, for I am their leader.
That's like, yeah, there you go. That's awesome. But yeah, and part of it too with electric is, I've led with electric a couple times, but it's brain power. Like I have to think more about it.
We have one that's got like a bluesy intro. I don't know what that song is. You've done it like twice, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
It always makes me happy. Once I was on stage and once I was just walking in to church and I hear like, I'm like, what is happening?
When I was in bands and stuff, I'd be more flashy and play more stuff, and it's fun. But
I remember Phil Ledford, who was drumming for you at the time at church, he invited us to do a fundraiser for Josh Wandell. That was pretty early on.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
he called me to do some fiddle, and it was like getting some buddies out there to raise money for a good cause. And then I show up, I want to say like, so here's like our little worship thing. I'm playing violin at the time. You're playing acoustic guitar, and I don't want to caricaturize everything, but it's a little bit just like, how great is our God. Like that's how I have it. And then we get there. I want to say Phil had like a double bass pedal on there that day.
That's like
I don't even know why it was there.
Yeah.
And then you like plugged in your electric. I think we were doing a bunch of blues type stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just like and my brain was just going, what is happening?
Parallel universe.
Yeah, because I grew up and the church was so separate from your regular life.
Right.
You'd still kind of have a regular life. You just never talk about it. So if you did have electric guitar skills, no one would ever know it. Because you want to be as spiritual as possible with your musical gifts. Right. And so that was pretty.
Yeah. We talk about too, like, where is that? There's always a tension there, I think, in worship music of, you want it to be good and you want it to be, it's got to have a certain skill level to it, ideally. But at the same time, if it can also go off the rails. Like I've played in bands, in worship bands, where the guitarist was just like, I mean, it's like, bro, like you're my ear now is going to that because it's the melody. So now it's not complimenting, it's just stealing the spotlight.
How grateful are you that I don't play electric guitar? It's got to be up there.
You do play electric violin, although we haven't incorporated that yet. But
I remember a couple years ago, North Point it was like a Trans-Siberian Orchestra style, like lasers. They had electric violin doing like Carol the Bells.
Yeah.
And I'd sent that to Jamie, I think, as a joke, or maybe he sent it to me. And I was like, how many lasers you got, Jamie? And he's like, oh, I can get lasers.
Yeah, that's right.
And I thought about that this Christmas so we had a big several power outages.
Yes.
So the scale, can you give for the people that don't go to Grace, like a sense of the scale of the church, like how many volunteers, how many staff does it take to run a service, and what kind of different layers of things? Because we have live performance and like house lights and production.
Right.
Then we have, children's ministry, and then we're broadcasting to the overflow room, and then
and
live stream. Yeah. So assuming we have power, what kind of
that's good.
Resources do you need to put on a full service?
There's a lot. I mean, some of the initial planning goes back. Can go back a month or two for a service, and Christmas and Easter.
A regular service.
Yeah. And then Christmas and Easter we can have up to double the amount of people in the room.
Yeah.
So it's just a lot to figure out and schedule. As far as kind of what we're doing in worship arts, so there's kind of the normal stuff of preparing the music and charting and getting all the MP3 so the band can learn what they need to, and getting the flow right of how different elements are working. And we try to add in some things too. So like this year was Benjamin reading scripture at a certain piece, and there's kind of like an intro video to kind of help act as a call to worship and set the tone. And
even that, so just to kind of stop off at the scripture reading.
Yeah.
We have far stage right and left, I think, we have the big crosses.
Yeah.
Right? Those things are heavy.
Yeah.
Okay? And then so you change that out for a manger.
Right.
And then it's like we also have to be able to hear him speak over there.
Right.
So somehow he's got to have a mic or be given a mic.
Yeah.
And everyone has to know how. And then you got to be able to see him, because we don't usually light that the same.
Right.
So that's one tiny little.
Well, to get even more granular with that one, so like we have the passage that's going to work with that's going to intro into the message. And then this is kind of a little trick of the trade. I always print it up in large font. And then, that little ribbon in the Bible, I'll tape it to that ribbon. So that way when you open it, because there's nothing worse.
Yeah.
Like you can't see, it's your time.
Yeah.
And then you're trying to find your place. So even that, like the week prior was getting the big Bible, printing that out,
just trying to make the path of least resistance be something that's good.
Right. And for me, being responsible for that, I want to set up Benjamin to have the easiest, like all you need to worry about.
Yeah.
It's just
someone's got to tell him or walk him through, hey, we got all this garland on that top stair. Yeah, right? Like you got to step, like
that's right.
Tiny little things.
And we did a run through that the week leading up to Christmas. We had kind of a lighting, and we talked through all that stuff on like a Thursday. And this happens, I guess, Saturday.
And lighting is nuts. Just in general, it's a whole...
Yeah.
I mean, there's been times I've been playing piano. In our current setup, we have kind of 2 layers of keyboards. And you might be rock solid on what you're playing. Maybe I've scribbled some notes I've got over here. Big lighting change. Now there's like green lights coming from the right. So all the black keys, I now have huge shadows. And so you're like, the whole geography looks way different just because of a lighting change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so that was another, like Matt walked all the way to the manger during his sermon and then walked in the middle, then all the way to the cross to kind of have an application time at the end. But even that, like you've got cameras that have to, this was beforehand too of framing out the shot where he's going to land. So camera 2 is ready. Like when you hear the cameras, like the production room in the back, it's like behind the scenes at the Oscars or something. Like camera 1 ready, all right, camera 2 go. And it's just very, it's very much you have to be kind of in it to make that work. Yeah. And it's one of those, like, we started all of that with the live stream for COVID because we had to. That was the only way to have church was to stream it out. Yeah. And it's evolved since then. But it's you've got to be kind of mentally in it. Yeah. And as far as preparation, a lot of that, I mean, a lot of worship leading is like a pyramid. Like you just see the iceberg. You just see the top part of it. And if it works, it's like, oh, I mean, you don't think anything of it.
The expectation in all of anything with you plugging in anything. Right. The expectation is that everything works perfectly, no matter what it is. Right. There's no dead time. There's no awkward pauses. And then on top of that, you add a layer of embracing everyone's spiritual desires and trying to serve that at the same time. So it's pretty crazy how all that stuff goes together. So Christmas morning, way more than a month of planning. Yeah. Because all these little tiny changes. And did you know, so they were doing rolling blackouts. Did you know it was a possibility that
we knew? Well, we talked about it the day before. So we had I think they had announced, or we figured out there were some blackouts happening.
I thought you would be safe because I was like, there's no way they're going to do this on a commercial level.
Yeah, right. Well, I thought so at first, and then it was like we're doing it by zone. Yeah, it's like, what's a zone? It's like we're about to find out what it's
like. Hey, just the least convenient thing possible is probably going to happen.
Yeah. But we got kind of clued in, so we knew it could happen the day before, and talked through some scenarios. And I have a generator at home. I'll put gas in it, and we'll pack it, and we have a small sound system we could throw up in a hurry.
Which we did.
Which we did.
By we, I mean not me.
So that Christmas Eve morning, my power went out at like 6:20, which apparently was the very first of the deal. And they said we're going to have it in zones, and it'll take about, I saw one notice that was like, it'll take 5 hours to roll through all the zones. So I'm thinking, okay, well, my house should be good, right? Because we just had ours. We just took our hit. And then the church went out maybe like 30 minutes to an hour after our neighborhood.
Does the church have emergency power?
We do, yeah. We have like emergency lights.
But it's not to power like the PA.
No. It's just like lights.
I can't even imagine how much power that is.
Yeah. So that our neighborhood, and then the church went out. Yeah. So we thought we were good. So we're like,
because when I got there for rehearsal, power had just been restored.
Yeah. Well, so during rehearsal,
I think it came on while I was walking.
This happened again before we got there. The power, I think, went out, and then when we got there, we got word of someone else's who was in our neighborhood, power's out again.
Yeah.
We're like, uh-oh. Like the church happens next, and then sure enough, our power went out. The problem with our sound system, even though it sounds amazing and great, there's so many components that when you have to, it takes a while.
It's like steering a ship. It's like, hey.
Yeah, it's not an on switch. Like you have to power things in sequential order and make sure it's all.
Yeah.
There are lots of things that are on a network and talking to each other, and so
if that all works seamlessly, it's still how long?
Yeah,
do you think?
Still, I mean, at the time, and we were chasing a problem, but at the time it was like 35, 40 minutes.
I cannot
just to
even
make sure
imagine.
all the components.
I have teeny tiny responsibilities of production when we do something.
Yeah.
But there are literally times where, for no reason, like look, see, that's a perfect example. Those were all blue.
Yeah, right.
And then now there's blue and green.
Yeah.
There's some communication thing.
Yeah.
So I got to go and solve it.
Right.
And that's a teeny tiny thing. And there's like hundreds of opportunities for that to happen.
Absolutely. Points of failure. So we talk about that anytime we set up what about a TV on screen? It's like, okay, well, how many points of failure are there from there to, the live stream or whatever? So that's always, you're always trying to minimize that. So we knew that, okay, if power drops again, and now it's like it's happened twice. Yeah. What do we do? And what happens if it drops in the middle of a song set or in the middle of the message? Do we try to get it back on? And what do we do? And then we kind of went through the morning, got another notification from someone in our neighborhood, hey, power's out again. And this was like 10:20 or something. Yeah.
So first service is at 11 a.m. Yeah.
So we're like, oh no.
And we had through all this, the band has had very little, not even a good sound check, I think, pretty much.
Yeah, we normally warm up, go through the set, have a full run through with tech so they can feel really good about everything. Yeah. And all that was just gone.
And I like to feel good about kind of being reset in order. So I might know a song really well. I played at home. Yeah. And I got all the little licks. Well, then I come in and then we talk and then we sound check. And then we play this other song 3 times, and all of a sudden, now that lick's like a little bit out of my head. Yeah. So it's like you got to have the lick, but coming from the other song in order.
Right. Yeah.
Which is not the end of the world. Sure. It's just if I have everything I ever want, then it's nice to know the correct sequence going through.
And part of that preparation generally, because if I've heard people who've joined our worship team are like, you guys play the songs a ton before the services. And it's like, well, the reason why is a lot of that kind of muscle memory and doing it and encountering the transition things that you're talking about. I would rather that happen before and not during, because if it happens during, it's just gonna create a distraction and a mistake. And
there's a sweet spot, I think, from the musician's point of view, where I personally, after I hit it and I feel really good, it's real easy to get casual. I mean, like really casual. Sure. Like, I got it now. And then
Well, and part of my job too is to listen to all the musicians, and a lot of them are like they've got full-time jobs, and this is how they play on the weekends. Is to one, stretch and push as much as I can without overdoing it or overwhelming. Yeah. And then also trying to gauge, okay, we went through the song and the transition. How'd it feel overall, and is it worth going back and fixing this, or does it feel good? But some of the reps too are for the whole, because you've got to figure out the whole team, and it depends on who you have. Like some teams can just come in and just knock it out,
and that's based on their experience and skill, and also, is it a set we've played before?
Right. Exactly.
But then Jamie and them might have done a whole new stage setup and new lights, and maybe I was playing on the Grand before.
Right, Yeah, and some of our rehearsal time and the run through is for them, so it's for them to dial in the mix and get the lighting, make sure that's good, and the cameras, and because a lot of their volunteers will come in and it's like, okay, who's going to be where and when do we zoom in and all that kind of stuff. So there's definitely a lot of production stuff.
That's a lot going on. Yeah, it's cool. So. Christmas, kind of to finish that up. So what ended up happening?
Okay, so power dropped 15 minutes before the start of 11.
Yep.
So I'm, we normally are like huddled and praying, and I'm running outside to like fire up my generator. and then like run a cable, and it's freezing. It's
It got cold in the green room.
It's freezing cold.
It probably dropped, what, 10, 15 degrees?
Man.
Like,
and it was the wind too, was just like bitter cold. So we get that going.
Was it cold on stage?
Run,
when you played that
no,
first
it was
time?
fine.
It was okay.
Yeah. And then run the small sound system and get it all patched. And
it was like on little wheels.
Playing, yeah.
And then you had Jason like DJing up there.
He was like, I felt bad for Jason. He was like on
He was
stage,
fine.
like, and he's behind the system, so he can't hear it.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, it's like he's just hearing the reverb back.
Yeah, that's funny. That's like, do these lighting cues, but close your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't hear a
look
thing.
At the reflection off the wall.
But you know the good thing about that is if people are paying attention, if there is anything that's attention calling with sound, you know, like the common things like, maybe if we turn back and look at the booth, it'll help.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't know that the mic went out.
Hey guys. Yeah.
Hey, we can't.
Yeah, tech guys, if you're doing your job really well, no one notices. You're invisible.
Yeah,
and then if something messes up, then everyone turns in. And
Jamie's line, which I'm sure is not original, but it's like everyone has two jobs.
Yeah.
There's whatever you do for a living and sound guy.
That's true.
Oh.
So he was trying to. I mean, we haven't EQ'd anything. We haven't we're just on the fly.
Yeah.
And then trying to check our watches. We get it set. We get it going. And then I'm talking with Matt through.
And we're not live streaming the first one, right?
We can't because we haven't.
Because nothing's going through. It would be like it would be an iPhone. From the back of the room,
through
that's not a great representation.
service. But the lights came back on.
Yeah.
So the heat's on, the lights are on, everyone claps.
That's a win.
We haven't started, but
did
like
kids
I said
open
before,
and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think they did.
Sweet.
But we couldn't power everything back on.
Yeah.
And then bring the band out and. So we just ran with it,
and it was packed. Even people keeping their coats on and stuff.
Yeah.
I heard you singing out there. So I'm in the. So from my perspective, I show up and there's like beep 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 beep.
Yeah.
And it's just like the rate of which Jamie's running around is indicative of the overall.
Yeah. State of chaos.
Yeah. If Jamie is cracking jokes and hanging out with us a little bit, then it's like everything's great.
Yeah.
And then you get the sense that you shouldn't speak to him.
Yeah.
So we walk in, it's like everyone's just standing around like a little welcome party. And then we just kind of migrate to the green room. We're letting you guys solve problems.
Yeah.
And eventually we get told that, we're not going out.
Yeah.
And then we hear you playing.
Right.
And it's getting cold. And we're like, no one's bringing their kids to church with the power going on and off. And I finally was like, I'm going to go get coffee and get ready for the next service. I figured you'd still have me come out and play violin for Silent Night. So I'm going to keep my hands warm. And so I go out, open the door, and there's just people everywhere getting hot chocolate. Yeah. And I'm like, oh,
Christmas Eve,
some people are here. Yeah. I go peek in and almost couldn't find a seat. Like it was just insane.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of people. And I think what
and
was
it's
cool
just
about
you
it,
up there on the little speakers, which actually they worked.
That's what I was going to say. I think there's a kind of intimate quaintness about the setup, and Matt even said, and we talked about this, of like, this is our living room for the morning. We're here together as kind of a church family, and we're just going to sing a few songs. And what a
did you do the full set? Because I couldn't hear you.
No. I did different songs. So I actually
I did not even know that.
Yeah. I printed up songs that I thought people would know.
Yeah, because they didn't have any lyrics.
No lyrics.
I noticed that on Silent Night.
Because
everyone's like, Silent Night, Holy Night.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that stuff. Wait, how did you keep all? Do you know all the lyrics?
No, I printed up some. When the power came back on, I printed up some sheets. So I just did, and then some of the verses are like, let's do that verse again. So you just sang it. Let's try it again. So I tried to do something that people would know and they could sing a couple times. And,
So what songs did we end up doing? Do you remember?
We did "O Come All You Faithful" and "Joy to the World."
Oh, that's a good one.
And then I think it may have been just those two at the beginning, and then Silent Night.
Okay. It was crazy though, because I literally felt bad for you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, he's out there. We don't have. He's just all alone, which I knew you'd be fine skill-wise.
I told you, like,
I thought it'd be an empty room too. So you're gearing up.
Well, what's crazy is we've done this before, where the power went out randomly on a Sunday morning, and it was in the summer. So we propped open the doors, and it was just there's no power.
Yeah,
it's just like strumming and singing into this big room. But it was cool. Like it's memorable. It's like its own unique experience. It's
we
a
could
reminder.
We could do that on purpose.
Yeah.
Just to really pull people
There you
together.
go.
No, you won't know. I'll just go find the big switch.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a big.
That.
I'm not going to do that. I promise I will not do that. So the way we met and the way I got started with Grace Fellowship. So I'm primarily a violinist, but I love music and I will jam out on whatever I can get my hands on. And I started going to Grace. So I have a similar story that I thought was very unique.
Maybe not so much.
This was like, grew up in the Bible Belt at a pretty conservative church. I reached the rough age of 18, questioned a lot of stuff, kind of left that church, wanted to go out on my own, then struggled to find a new church.
Okay.
And at times didn't try for a long time.
Yeah.
And then I find Grace, and it's like, okay, that was one good experience. Let's see if there's another type thing. And then the more I got to learn about kind of the corporate leadership side of things, even down to you hop on the website and you have clear values, and then you publish, the total amount that people give and stuff like that. And even just that little bit of kind of accountability, it's like these numbers are on par with the reach in the community.
Right.
Whereas there's just some churches have a lot of secrecy and you're just not sure. Yeah. And so I'm like, man, these people seem just dependable and consistent. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I want to play on the worship team. That just seems like I've kind of always done that. You want to play for fun, and then you also want to use your skills if you have whatever they are, If I was a fence builder, it'd been cool to build the church fence type stuff.
Yeah.
And so I go to the office, and I'm like, hello, I would like to join the worship team. And I don't know who was there. She's super nice.
Emily, probably.
And she was like, okay, you need to talk to Eastman Mann. He's our worship arts director. And so then I just waited after a service and then walk up and you're like, hi, my name's Daniel.
I remember this.
I've done a lot of music. I'd love to play for you. I play the violin. That did not seem to immediately impress you. That's not an instrument that we had on stage.
Right.
And then you were like, hey, go to gfc.com/audition or whatever. GFC now, there's a thing, /audition and like fill out a thing. So I filled it out and I'm like, I have won competitions before. Everyone's going to love me. That's not entirely true, but I feel really comfortable with the violin in my hand. Yeah. And they hear nothing for a while. I think I sent you another email and you're like, no, I got it. Nothing for it was like 7 months before I got to play a single thing.
Was it that long?
Yeah. And because I've told this story before.
Okay.
But it's okay. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a need as well.
Right.
But I just wanted a chance to play. And then you didn't have an audition like rep for me to play.
Right.
It wasn't for violin. So I think we played something for guitar or something.
Yeah.
And I walk in and Dawn was there and Ethan was there, and it turns out we had like a lot of mutual friends.
Okay.
And Don's like, you play with these guys? You play with these guys?
Nice.
He's like, do you love Jesus? And he's like, you're in, man.
Yeah.
And that was before I even played. So that really put me at ease. And so then I just played a little bit, and I don't think I played after that until Christmas. I think you brought me on for a Christmas thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was in.
So our audition process, especially at the time, like we've gone through different cycles of when I first started, everybody wanted to audition.
Yeah.
Because I guess it's like new guy and
this is my chance.
So we ran auditions a lot, and then it kind of became demand based. So it was like, because in my position, I've got to put together a panel. So it's not just me.
Right.
Approving people I like, but it's a panel of existing volunteers, ideally, and other people who are involved in the ministry who can get to know someone. So it's not just even talent that's the only deciding factor. It's fit. It's where they are in their walk, how they're fitting with the church.
Yeah.
So I think at the time it was kind of like demand based. Like once I get 2 or 3, then we'll put the whole thing together.
I think
and
that's
then we'll And I think it was just a dry spell.
It was just me.
And you have to remember too, like there are Yeah, it's auditions are interesting because you can find someone talented who's going to stick for a long time.
Yeah.
And then most of the time it's not that.
But we all say the same thing, because I've sat in on a ton of auditions now, and every time it's like, I thought I was this little unicorn, and everyone says the same thing. It's like, I've done worship in my church forever. Yeah. I didn't really agree with a lot of the theology of the church. I left, and then I didn't do anything for a while, and now I'm here, and I'd like to play in your worship band. I'm like, not that that's bad. It's just everyone will say that.
And it's so personal. Music is so personal to people because it's the arts are a human expression.
Yeah.
And so it's connected. Like if you're a singer, it's your voice. You can't change it. You can develop it. But it's a part of you. And if you're playing, you're putting yourself out there. Versus like hospitality, where you're a door greeter, or kids ministry, you're helping with diapers or whatever. Like that's it's different. Like this is more of a personal. So to tell someone, no, you can't serve. You don't do that in other ministries of the church. And even other nonprofits, you don't say, well, no.
Well, in the performing side of things, all the way up to like Broadway and all that stuff, like acting, gig work. You either get the gig or you never hear back. Like most of the time. And if it's like, if you had a reference and it's a small specialized thing, they might be, hey, we decided to go another way. But by and large, you go to open audition stuff, you either get a call back or you don't.
Right.
But that's kind of...
We've developed our audition process quite a bit, I think. And I think it's in a really good spot. So we always have a panel.
And that's really interesting that you have, like, just... Is it the size of the church that demands an audition process? Or?
No, I ran auditions when I was at a church of probably 200 people.
Yeah. I mean, because you wouldn't bring on, like, hey, we're building out a new wing for the kids. We need an electrician. If you got a good servant's heart, regardless of your skill set, get up there. Well, but you can also develop a lot.
There are different skill set averages of the band depending on church. That's normally correlated with church size. The more people you have, generally the more talented your pool to pull from is for the band.
I actually have this as a question that you can kind of go into. What do you look for? Because there's a lot, and we hire people to teach kids, which we take very seriously. There is also kind of like a moral character component to it. So let's say you have to weigh skill and dependability and just all sorts of things. What do you value when you are looking to fill a need? On the worship team.
Right. So we look at musical skill. We look at fit with the team. That's another thing the panel talks about after the audition. And then it's a, they audition their skill set. And then we interview. We talk back and forth for a while, and then the panel kind of debriefs, talks about skill set, fit, and then best next step. And some of that has to do with their spiritual walk. Like they may be, we've had people who are awesome at their instrument, but in their life, there's a lot going on. They really need to be plugged into a group, or they might need a recovery group, or we're a church, we're not just a performing center. Like it's people in their lives. So we talk about all that stuff and try to place people where they best fit. As far as the skill set, I think we are looking for just that piece of it. There are different models with churches. Like some churches pay all their musicians, and it's like, I call that the professional model. It's like, we need it just this way, and we're going to pay everyone. They come in, you do your job.
And that correlates with how much you can bark at them a little bit. Like if you need to really ask a lot, and they're all volunteers. It's like, oh man.
That's true. And you can demand more, and you can push the envelope with production more. And a lot of these really high production level churches, that's their model, because it's one less thing you have to worry about. You're just paying really good musicians to come in and do their part. The other side of the spectrum, which I've been involved with too, is kind of I call it the developmental model.
Let's show up.
Well,
key of G. Dun.
Well, the mindset here is that anyone who wants to serve in worship arts, we're going to provide a place for them to serve. And we're a church. That's what churches do. And then the job of the worship leader is to you bring them along. After you cry, you develop them to where they can they're able to serve in some capacity.
My observation has been, and this could be totally anecdotal.
Yeah.
Might be very, very wrong. Skill and experience, especially within a band setting, varies inversely with strong opinions somehow. So it's like someone who's been around and they've played a lot, they usually voice fewer strong opinions.
Yeah.
And someone where maybe this is one of their first times on a bigger stage or something, they come with, maybe they thought it was going to be different or whatever. But I've introduced several musicians to that you've used for like special events.
Right.
My favorite thing to hear, I actually heard this the last one we brought on. She's like, I grew up in church. I've played with a lot of churches. She's done a ton of professional stuff, and she's like, hands down, the easiest, most organized church to plug in and play for. She's like, I mean, they had like sent me stuff ahead of time, and when I arrived, that was actually what we played, and then like had stuff printed out, and just the consistency of what you presented and then what you said, and then showed up, and that's how it was, and.
And that's part of how I view.
Awesome. That's the best compliment.
That is awesome.
That I have
and that's part of how I view my job, is to serve the musicians in that way and to prepare for them, because like we have one bass player who he like restores floors, and he's busy and he runs a business. Like he doesn't need to fumble through charts, and like I want to prepare.
Print them out.
Yeah, he needs to come in and just do his thing, like do what only he can do, and then my job is to help prepare the table for that. And this ties into kind of where we are. There's what I call the professional model, the developmental model, and then the progressive model. And that's saying that our band, wherever it is on the map, and I've helped with 7 different churches, so this is like it's been in different places on the map. Where the average skill level is, to me, is the bullseye target. So if you come in under that, or would say you're really far from the average.
And you're talking kind of just skill level within worship arts stuff.
With the worship band. So if you're under that, if I've got 4 drummers that are like ready to go and you're not quite there, then my response would be, and this has happened twice to drummers, to say it's not a no, but it's not a yes yet. It's a work on it, progress to where you're at least on par with who we have ready. And obviously better if you're past that, if you're just really working hard, and then come back. And because what that does is your average always moves forward. It progresses versus the developmental model, your average will slide backwards. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think churches have to...
Well, you could also have people like leave or move away or go...
Yeah, exactly. You've got to... Part of it is defining the type of music ministry that you have in the church, and there's nothing wrong with the developmental model if your philosophy is we exist so that people can serve. Our model is a little bit more of we exist to provide the best distraction-free worship service as we can with who we have and volunteers. And so when we have an audition, we have that in mind. And so it's not my job in our setting is not to give lessons to bring them up to where our average is. It's to say, hey, go get lessons. Go to Blair Academy. Like,
hey, we've had a few come through.
Yeah, exactly. And then polish your skill and then come back. And we've had people that have done that and have done great. And one of our drummers is like, he's one of our staple drummers, but the first response when he first auditioned was not yet.
Yeah.
And then he worked his tail off and then came back. And then, so that's kind of how I view...
I remember I was at that audition. He could like throw down. He had a great groove. It was just like start to finish, staying on click. It seemed like he hadn't done as much recently, maybe or ever. Right. And that's like a tiny little thing. You might have an awesome classical pianist.
Yeah.
I mean, just fingers flying all over the place.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's the fit part.
Yeah.
Like you got to
come in, never played with in-ears. Yeah. Can't manage kind of the electronic aspect of it. Don't understand that the bass kind of takes up this frequency and we need to leave that alone.
Yeah. And there's a stylistic version of, and every church has to kind of figure out where are we with the style of music we're going to present. And that there's no right or wrong necessarily in that. But with what we have, there is a kind of a style and way in which we do music, and so part of the learning process...
Was that the same? Was the style... Did you alter the style of worship when you came to Grace?
I'm sure I have in some ways, but
You think you're pulling from the same bank of songs or categories that they were before? I wasn't around.
Right. So yes and no. Like Grace has always been contemporary, like as far as the traditional hymns and orchestras and choirs versus kind of the more praise song,
like CCM.
Yeah. So they've always, and they, you know, since '79, they've had that kind of version of that style, and it's gone through different phases with worship teams, and they have flute and guitar and drums, and then a couple years before I got there, it alternated to more of a rock band based vibe versus you know, a lady on a piano, and that was it vibe, and it would alternate. And so it was kind of their worship wars era, I guess, in the church. They were looking for a long-term fit, and also knew that they wanted to.
Who decides that? Is that elder like leadership based, or is it more like pastor worship pastor talk about it? You think
it's a both and. So like the elders spent time, which I'm super thankful for, to come up with a document that went through the worship service.
Prior to you getting there?
Prior to me getting there.
Okay, so they had boxes you need to check type thing?
They had a direction that they wanted to go as a church, which I appreciated, because I'm not coming in and let me do it the way I want to do it.
Yes, that's a good question.
Yeah.
So I know that you are not designing a worship service that I think is maximum coolness.
Yeah.
Right, I love to have a good time.
That's a good thing.
I like emotional, impactful stuff and all this stuff too. But you're not sitting down with a single person in mind, going, "How can I check all their boxes?" To use that again. But I also don't think you do that for you.
Right.
I don't think what we see on Sunday is if everything was designed for Stephen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I look at it as a couple things. I don't consider it my worship service. I consider it the church's worship service. And then when I'm looking out there, and if you do look out there, there's a super wide range of people that's part of the church family. So you have middle schoolers, and you have 90 plus. You have empty nesters. You have parents.
Yeah.
And to me, a lot of that, like what people see and experience, comes back to what is it? What is worship? And what is the point of what it is I'm doing? Is the point to have emotional manipulation? No.
Yeah.
But can music through God design, have an impact and move people in certain expressions of beauty? Yes.
Yeah.
So I think there are different ways, to me, that I try to do as best as I can to make worship accessible to everyone, that also still has a style to it. I mean, we're not going to have a choir and then an orchestra and then band, and like you still have to figure out a lane. But within that, I'm not just doing the songs that I love to do because I love to do them. That's not
because this has a cool guitar riff.
Yeah, that's not.
But for a while, at least, you could probably get away with that. You're the only one that kind of has to accept information and make decisions.
Yeah,
on that.
That's correct. And I'm getting,
because I would, I absolutely would.
Well, I'm getting, it's a couple things. I'm getting input that no one else gets in the church, even the lead pastor.
Yeah.
So I'll get, "Hey, I love this song. It ministers to me. Can you do it?" And it's from 1978, and it's a choir, and it, you know, stylistically, like that's not our style. We wouldn't do that. And then kind of the way I think through it is, if I get that on both sides, then that's good, because that means that.
So what would the opposite of that look like?
It would be more of like what
just
you're
like
talking
super
about.
modern stuff. Or?
Turn it up. Turn the volume up. I want to feel that kick drum throughout my whole body, and I want to more the experiential. Kind of what you see.
So if you have people going, "Why don't we let loose a little bit?"
Yeah.
And then you have people going, "This makes me a little uncomfortable because it's loud."
Yeah.
Or whatever. Then we kind of, if that's balanced.
Yeah.
I like that you use the phrase emotional manipulation because I have kind of a soapbox on that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just so true. You can design, just like a food or a drink or even like a nice wine or something, it can all enhance an experience, but it's a recipe that can be recreated in many, especially if you have some charisma. But like if you go to an art gallery, you're likely going to be moved.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? But so an artist, they could be drawing this, I mean, just kids suffering, and they are drawing that just to pull this out of you.
Yeah.
But there's so many emotions that can be pulled with it. When you go see a movie, like an Academy Award winning big movie, it's not even real.
Yeah.
And they're pulling real like you see, to go back to the kids. I got young kids. I see this kid really sick or dying, and I see the parents react. It's not real. My kid's safe. That kid was an actor, but you're like, oh.
Yeah.
And we could, through trial and error or whatever, I mean, really move people's emotions through our worship service.
Absolutely. And you see that. Like, that's really, really common now more than it has been, I think, ever in the church.
Yeah.
But
I'm not saying that would necessarily all be bad or good, because we still we got to play something.
Yeah. And the other
my
side,
goal isn't to not move them emotionally.
the other side to that coin, well, there's a design, I think, in music that God has given it. So worship.
There's a pentatonic scale.
Yeah. So worship means to ascribe worth. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily tied to music. It means ascribing worth.
Yeah.
But historically, music is the vehicle used to do that in the church. So like,
there are whole denominations of churches that do no instruments.
Right. Yeah.
Let's say instrumental. I ended up with instruments.
Cement, Andy's mints. Instruments. There it is. Write it down.
I'm going to do this.
If nothing else came from this podcast, you can buy the new.
I'm going to put the little Academy logo on it. Hi, would you like an instrument?
Here it is.
That is amazing. Oh, I'm so happy about this.
That's awesome.
Okay, anyway. Manipulation.
Anyway, so historically the church has used music even without instruments, right? Because that is there are
voice is an instrument.
Yeah, they use there are Old Testament choirs.
Yeah.
And
David had a harp.
Yeah, right. And
he did some emotional manipulation, I think, personally.
Well, the kind of where I was going with that is music is the means by which you worship, and I think it's designed. I mean, God created the world. He created music. I think part of the design of music is to do that, because what it does is it unifies people when they sing.
Yeah.
They're singing together, and you create one voice.
I mean, singing's that primary thing, because we're the only ones playing instruments.
Right, that's
we
true.
don't have a bunch of people with their guitars out there.
That's exactly right. And it does allow for appropriate biblical emotions and expressions. Like there are connected emotions biblically that are appropriate and good. So having a heart of surrender, or making a joyful noise. It's not making a noise, it's making a joyful noise. So I think that music can be used.
I've got that locked in.
I got that one. You can use music in a helpful way to help people worship in a way that's not distracting, or the benefit of music is that people enjoy it. But that's not, in a worship setting, that's not the purpose of it.
That's not
it's a benefit of it.
Yeah.
And it's not bad because it's a benefit, and it's good. It's like a common grace. It's a good thing,
but if that was the box you wish to check, was maximum enjoyment of the worship service, we would probably alter a lot of things.
I probably wouldn't even do it. Like, I wouldn't be inclined to devote my life to it if that were, and that's just me. That's just how I'm wired. That was some of the experience I had in the band world, music world, of performing for people to enjoy it. That for me and my wiring, that wasn't there for me. Being in the church and using music as a vehicle by which the church, as a church family, can worship God, to me is more. That's it for me. Like that has a purpose behind it. And it gets me excited. That's why I've been doing it for so long.
How long have you been? We joke that you are ageless because, and it's not even like it's a joke that he even gets, because you look remarkably similar, you and your wife, to like when you met, which is pretty awesome. I'm excited to see how long you keep that streak going.
We'll see.
But how long have you been leading worship at Grace?
So at Grace, I think 12 years January will be 12, I think.
Yeah. Did you hit that 7-year itch thing? Like, did things change? Did you feel like, can we add something or can we change something? Kind of like they talk about with.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it's moved enough. I mean, like, it's way different now than it was them.
Because at first it's a new job.
Yeah.
Was it just the open? Did you just apply? Did you know anybody when you came?
I didn't even know about Johnson City. I didn't know Johnson City existed.
What?
Until I applied.
Oh, Wagon Wheel hadn't been written yet.
Yeah, that's right. So it was. I knew.
Wagon Wheel has incorrect. Incorrect geographical representation, but they do say Johnson City.
That's awesome. No, I wasn't. I was looking. So my wife and I were looking for at least a year, and there were opportunities elsewhere, and it was kind of what we were talking about.
Yeah, because you did have that big resume.
Yeah, and it wasn't lack of opportunity; it was lack of a fit, and we wanted a long-term place where we could, where it just fit and felt good for us to settle, both geographically and also the church too. So we took our time looking, and then this kind of popped up as an opportunity, and then it was December 2010 when I started interviewing and talking to Tom at the time, and we talked a lot about what we've talked about of worship styles and theology and all of that, just because I knew I'd done it enough. It's not like, oh, cool, I get to do music in a church. It wasn't that for me, and certainly not for him.
Yeah.
And so we aligned on a lot of things, not everything, but a lot of things. And like I said, they had kind of this elder document. They had it's hot off the press because they were going through this stuff.
Was that unique to the other places you had looked at?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think most other...
Just having a little clarity on what they're looking for. And
and Tom's makeup was to go into values and like why, and list the reasons why. And you see that in different leadership, church culture things at Grace, and like 7 values here. And at the time, there's like 4 distinctives here, and like there's a lot of thought put into why do we do it, and what are the principles that guide why we do it. So they had spent a lot of time with that, and I don't blame them for this. It was good, but it was a little bit prescriptive of like this is how it should go. Here you go. More of like a computer like software script. So I came into that, which I was fine with, because I've been a part of churches that were more didn't care, or they're unhealthy. So I actually was like, this is great. You guys we can align on this at the front end. And then I think the more Tom and I worked together, and he could breathe a sigh of relief. I'm not going to just who's this kid from Winston-Salem. The more we started to align. It's all about me. 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Here's my new song, and buy the CD in the lobby. So the more we work together.
I would say a huge percentage of Grace has no idea that you've been running Guitar Man. I try not to mix them, and I've seen a lot of people there. Even people that have like from the church who come to talk to us. I'm like, hey, what are your goals? If we do classical guitar, they might be like, really just want to do like some worship songs for my worship church. I'm like, okay, well, like this is us, this is our tuition, but like the fastest way to get a guitar in your hand if you like the worship stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
So I don't know if they ever do.
Yeah, who knows? I'm sure some have. So as there was a little bit more of a handoff from prescribed written, here's how it should work, to hey, you're leading this, and you should have more flexibility in how, as long as it's more value driven than it was prescriptive.
I think that's in a lot of ways, because I feel like that's been me with you some. Is that like I come in, and then we do some acoustic stuff on Monday nights with us, and I feel like that's where I got to know your playing style a lot better. But then it's like I started doing a little bit of keys, and it was like mostly pads, and then and then it's kind of evolved a little bit that way.
And it's still something we talk about, and the world is changing, and people are changing, and so I think that's the beauty and the challenge with music, is it's largely subjective. It's largely beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the challenge, like I thought about this recently, like a band plays stuff they love to play, they get a market that loves that music, and then they go and tour and play the same 10 songs with awesome musicians who are really good at those. Church is almost the opposite. You're using volunteers to play to people of just a huge range of ages and backgrounds and flavors of music, and then you're playing new songs every week. It's like, it's so different. but that's
new songs most weeks.
Yeah.
Not every single week.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean. It's not the same set.
Yeah.
It's
not
a
the
new
same
set.
people.
It's a new set and new people every week. So it's very different than like a band, and even these worship bands that go tour.
Yeah.
It's that model. And there's kind of an unrealistic expectation, I think, for worship bands to do what they do. It's like, well, we've got volunteers who are, this is.
And I like that they do worship concerts.
Yeah, it's not a slam on that. It was just more of the difference of.
But it's not the same as your regularly, weekly.
Yeah, it's just different.
Service.
I mean, the church service and the worship service is really a church family coming together, joining together, being unified in how they ascribe worth through music. So it's unique, and that's the part that I personally love, that challenge. Yeah, like that's part of what I like about it.
You make it easy to work there or to participate because one, you are going to spend time thinking about that.
Yeah,
which is good, and so that means when you make decisions, even if I don't agree with them musically or they don't just kind of like perfectly align with my interests or stage of life or whatever, it's like, okay, he's thought this through and he's going to make a decision. I can't tell you how, you've done it a million times.
Yeah.
Working for an MD or a music director who can't make a decision.
Yeah.
Or who's trying to make everyone happy.
Right.
Oh, it's just painfully, it's so much worse.
Yeah.
So it's like, I know his values. He spent time thinking about it. He's consistent and he'll be decisive. Yeah. Sweet. Tell me what to do, man. I'll show up. Yeah. And of course, I do like to stir the pot occasionally.
Which is good.
Honestly, man, I probably goof off 5% of what I want to. I know I feel like it's more awesome. Than everyone else does. Yeah. But
that's funny.
It is just because you just get little ideas and you always want to play and all that stuff. So I have a couple little quick hits here. All right. 18-year-old Stephen Mann, what advice would you give him? Yeah. In a nutshell.
I think one thing I've learned, and this is just zooming out of worship leading and just life in general. Anything. But the value of the small change principle. You do something small but consistently. That there is people hear about this with compounding interest.
Yeah, like the slide edge and all that stuff.
But I think that applies in other areas too. So like 18-year-old Steven's drinking like Coca-Cola's like crazy. Yeah. Like, hey, if you replace that with water for, the next 20, 30 years, I think there's when you're young, you want to see this explosive change and these big things happening. And a lot of decisions are happening when you're young of like, where am I going to go to school and what am I going to do for the rest of my life and who am I going to marry? And like a lot of big life-changing decisions happen quickly. But when you get older, you kind of realize that some of the consistencies and small things will really add up and build up in a lot of ways. So I think that would be a piece of advice of value-based small changes, but over a long course of time consistently versus trying to have flash in the pan.
We tell our kids, like, it's not original, but most people underestimate what they can do, or overestimate what they can do in a year, underestimate what they can do in 10 years or a lifetime or whatever. And it's just such a teeny tiny bit.
Yeah. Well, and when you're 18, you haven't lived a whole lot of 10-year segments.
That's a good point. Like I have accomplished a lot since I was 8.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, when you are there, is
that why they're not listening to me?
Maybe that's it.
It's not relatable. It's like that's literally 50% of my life.
That's true.
Again,
not.
Yeah.
But I do. Yeah, it's one of those wisdom things that once you go through it, you realize like now 10 years has happened like crazy, like super
I was listening
fast.
to a Kobe Bryant interview with the Knuckleheads podcast. Okay. It's a great basketball thing. And he said, they're like, how do you rehab? Because he had some terrible injuries, like ripped his Achilles on the court, like towards the end of his career even. So his body's not healing as fast. Yeah. And he's like, you go into a dark place and you're looking at 9 months of rehab to even get back on your feet. Yeah. And he goes, but when you realize how fast time travels, in 12 months, I'm going to wish I had given up the 9 months to rehab. Yeah. I'm like,
Yeah,
go forward in time.
Yeah.
Any other advice for 18-year-old Steven?
Buy Bitcoin. When it's really low. Yeah,
Buy millions.
Buy Bitcoin. Early.
Would your wife had been what age were you when you got married? Had you
Don't ask me that. I don't know.
Roughly.
Were
you out of college?
2007.
I'm just trying to think.
So I was what, 26?
So you were out of college.
Yes.
Would she have been equally? Did she weigh in much on like if you pursued business without music or the worship arts or the touring gig? Did that affect some of your choices at all? Or is it more
I think I was already over. The touring gig thing happened in 2005.
Okay.
So that happened a couple years earlier.
So you kind of got the little taste
out of my system.
Yeah.
And then from there, when we met, that was one of the churches where I was helping lead worship, and I was still doing guitar lessons and that sort of thing. So it was more of like, am I going to go kind of music ministry route, or am I going to go business route? And yeah, I think she was good with both and flexible. She actually led the music at a camp for kids. It was like a NASCAR, or is a NASCAR camp, a petty run camp for kids with
pretty cool.
Disabilities.
How many ties to NASCAR do you have? Actually, I have a question on here. It's
really?
like, where crazy, you can finish that thought. But
yeah.
She did that, and I was like, where is some interesting places that playing worship music is going?
Whoa! Hey!
The Knuckleheads podcast came on right now. That's weird.
That's what you're talking about.
It was. This one's Dwayne Wade, though. That's pretty interesting. Awesome. I don't know how that happened. Google's doing some sharp targeting to be able to hear me say that and turn it on.
There it is. I wouldn't put it past them.
So you met Corinne through worship?
Yeah. So I was at a church, one of the churches where I was leading, and she was at this camp and was visiting churches, and so I led worship at a retreat.
Yeah.
And then we met at the retreat, and then it was a 45-minute drive for me, so we'd only hang out on Wednesdays and Sundays, and then eventually she moved to Winston, and we got engaged, married not too long after. So I guess maybe it was like a year from dating, we got engaged, and another 9 months we got married.
And then you found your current career before you guys were looking at kids and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, that was part of it. I mean, we wanted to settle
because your choice is if you have a direction you want to go that kind of sooner provides for your family or something. That's where a lot of the gigging musicians will weigh that in.
Yeah, sure. Man, that's a big thing. I mean,
but you pretty much. It seems like you had several experiences, a solid free choice, took your time, and still ended up in worship arts.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we did want a place to settle before we started a family, had kids. But at the time, I think I was leading 2 different churches on Sunday morning. I would actually lead one and then drive down the street and lead another one. Lord. She was with me through all that.
That would be...
It was crazy.
What if you say the wrong name? Dave's going to come up and pray.
Which by the way, this is another thing that I've done this for so long. No matter what time of day it is. I
was gonna hope you're gonna say this. This is my favorite part.
Good morning, no matter what, because it is in my mind.
You did it some on Monday nights, but it was pretty rare.
Yeah,
but it only comes up once or twice a year.
It's just ingrained.
When we did that worship night thing, I don't think you said it.
I probably
but you talked about I do not want to say. So it's just
it's there
7 o'clock at night or something, and you're like, good morning, let us stand.
Well, it's morning somewhere, right?
That is so funny. That is just one of the little gems that I get a taste of once or twice or 3 times a year.
Man.
That is awesome. So you and I have played some stuff with NASCAR.
Yeah.
We've probably done some other
right.
stuff, but what's some interesting places that guitar and worship songs has taken you?
Well, that's one, Bristol Motor Speedway. There's actually a connection in Bristol. So a connection I had in North Carolina actually got me hooked up with that thing, which is really cool.
Yeah. So what is that?
So it's a MRO's Motor Racing Outreach, and they kind of travel. The NASCAR community they're nomadic too. They kind of travel in this big group, and they have either their trailers or buses. MRO, they've been around forever, but they travel with them. So they put on VBS for the kids. They keep the kids during the races in one of the box suites.
Because that's a different experience for the kids. It's exciting. Like, you're a professional athlete. It's super. But like, for you got a 7-year-old kid, that's
it's
like
tough for the family.
Dad zooming around. Could get seriously injured. Could also win the race. There's a huge spectrum of what could go down.
It's true.
And their kids.
And spouses too, or a lot of them travel. And it's really unique.
I mean, you see cars trading paint, spin out, and the crowd's like, whoa! But that, like, I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And being in the box with them too, it's just like, Mom, you think he's going to win? And it's really neat
trash
to
talking
see
each other a little bit.
And so they help with the kids. They help put on pre-race services. They're there if something does happen. They're actually the first kind of spiritual leader, pastoral response to help the family through. They've done that a lot. But anyway, they're it's an outreach. So it's not a church, but it's a kind of a ministry that travels with NASCAR. And so, each race throughout the circuit, they'll have a pre-race, just a short 15, 20-minute service. So that's what you and I have been a part of, just playing a couple songs and then a brief message and a prayer and that sort of thing. So that's been a lot of fun.
It's pretty cool. So, it is amazing the kind of calm, because not all the drivers come in, but several of them do.
Yeah.
And then it's like the calm before the storm, and they're just in there and sing and a little prayer, and then, I mean, like, start your engines. It's like right after.
Yeah, it's pretty quick.
And it is loud.
Yeah.
I know the first time we went, there was walking through the tunnel. Well, like, Goldberg was there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I got a picture with him.
Yeah, that was crazy. And then you and I were walking through the tunnel, and I saw someone I knew, and just kind of was, you see a familiar face. You're like, hey, how's it going? You like get a little nod. And then my brain's like, I don't know him. That's Rajon Rondo. And this is like when the Celtics are super popular.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's one of the best point guards in the world.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
I hate being fanboy. I just want fanboy. And but like the realization, because you see a familiar face.
Right.
And I was like, man. It's like, I went to play worship music and I saw Rajon Rondo and Goldberg. Like, what a crazy
That is
day.
wild. And a lot of people come in. I think Dude Perfect was at one of them.
Yep.
We didn't see him, but they were
We were
there.
in the sprint box. They were in the Bass Pro box because they were right there. Because I remember there was a guy I knew there, and he walked out and he's like, I just ran into, and they weren't even what they are now. Did you see they're opening up?
I haven't, no.
Oh, this makes me want to just beat my head against the wall, because I love business and ideas and creating. And they are just always at least 10 steps ahead of what I can even think, much less pull off.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So they had their TV show.
Right.
They did their live tour.
Okay.
They went around and all that stuff. They are now launching a $100 million theme park called Dude Perfect World.
Whoa.
And it's basically like Dave & Buster's and Top Golf. Just like they have food. They have a 300-foot tower.
Where is this?
They said they've had hundreds of cities reach out trying to get them to build it. I can show you pictures. Actually, I am going to show you pictures of it. I thought I was going to tear up my house. Just because when you see an idea and it's like something you want to do, I just
see it fleshed out.
Yeah, and it's just like, of course they are. I'm going to just look up Dude Perfect World. This is totally...
Dude Perfect World.
I was calling my buddies, and I'm just like, I am a worthless, small thinking worm. Oh, look at this, man. Look at images. Yep, that's it. They have a 300-foot tower. It's on like a bajillion acres.
Does this exist, or this is something?
This is the renderings. Okay. But they officially announced it. So you can be able to do trick shots, like throw basketballs off the 300-foot tower.
That's awesome.
And if you make it, you get like huge prizes.
That's awesome. You could run your own YouTube channel just from that.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have like a world record room where you can try to do stuff. And like all the things they did, like the farthest dunk, and that you're going to be able to just do in person.
That's awesome.
So it's like, I'm jealous. I also want to go.
You should join Dude Perfect.
Oh, well, I have my Danny Doppo thing for kids. And I've always like thought about patterning after them. If we can be successful and build a big audience, like Dude Perfect's my model. That's awesome.
Right.
But I never dreamed of Danny Doppo World.
Yeah. Here it is.
What the heck, man?
Why not?
That is crazy. Any other crazy stories of places?
I got to lead. You were a part of this too. I got to lead a choir for the Chris Tomlin concert at Freedom Hall. That was cool.
Yeah.
I don't even remember why they reached out to me. I think we had a mutual
at
contact
the table or something.
Yeah. So they reached out and I got to pull a choir together. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. I'm sure there are others I can't think of.
My favorite, one of my favorite stories is your buddy giving you negative feedback during the service. You know what I'm talking about?
No.
Plugging his ears. You've told us like a few times.
Yeah.
Little things like that. You never know when they're going to pop up.
Yeah.
But.
So I had a friend, and he did this just to throw me off. So I'm leading. He's standing right in the middle, and it's one of these seatings that they progress up. So we're basically like eye level. Yeah. It's not like I'm going to see him.
And you can see there's not like super bright lights.
Yeah. You could see it was like a school auditorium. So I'm playing and he just we had a few complaints about volume, surprise.
Yeah.
So we start playing and he just looks me dead in the eye and just goes.
And you're over there singing. You're like, I want to look away.
He held it. It wasn't like, ha, and it was like, no. Deadpan.
It's like, just so you know.
Yeah. It was pretty good.
I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Keeping a straight face. I could probably imagine actually doing that.
I will say though, along those lines, like my brain's spinning now with different places I've led worship. This might be a misconception too for people who are like, there are worship degrees now. That's new. That wasn't there a while ago, but. That you graduate and you're at a Grace Fellowship or you're something like I spent at least 10-ish years not in that environment or what we're doing we talked about production there was a long time I was in a middle school auditorium and I was leading the team that had to push all the carts out and set all that stuff up and had service. I'm sweating. Break the stage down, break it all down. And every week we did that, and it was a part-time deal, it wasn't full-time. And then after that, we were in a movie theater. I helped the church launch. They had these tiny casters on these big bins, like they cheaped out on the rollers, and we're going over carpet. So here's just all of your might, and put it all out, set it all up, and the only attenders were the guy was trying to start this church, and her family, and they literally sat down. They didn't stand up for the worship time. They just sat there and just watched me, and it was like 5 people, but they were trying to get it started. And I was happy to help them get it started. And there are those but there are those experiences too, all which I learned through, just like anything else. You kind of pay your dues and you stay after it. This is the small change principle. You learn stuff through that. And so that's why when we have this power outage and you're trying to figure it out, well, that's not going to throw me off that much. Because that setup is what I've done 1,000 times at camps or whatever. And
there's a degree when it's so different from what was planned, you're just like, oh, this is what we're doing.
Yeah,
it'd probably be worse if there's just like an annoying buzz in one of your ears out of nowhere while you're playing a regular that's just like super distracting. Right. That'd probably be worse than just playing guitar.
I do have one funny story about that. So Tom, we talked about Tom before, and he would tell you he's not going to Broadway as a singer. So he had
I know this story.
He had his mic on to preach.
Yeah.
So we were playing, it was an Easter service. So this is like a big one. This is bigger than Christmas Eve.
Okay.
We were playing, I had a choir.
And we use, this is a Grace.
Yeah, this is a Grace,
So we use the in-ear monitors so we don't have a bunch of wedges and stage noise and all
no one
that
can hear what I'm hearing.
Yeah, so it's we can only hear what mics are turned up in our basically headphones.
So we start and I hear this voice that's just so loud and it's off. So my first thought is I'm in trouble because it's louder than my own vocal. So I'm trying to stay in tune. This voice is not in tune. So I'm just singing.
Any idea what song?
And then I'm like,
playing?
no,
that's
I have
probably
no clue.
too long. Okay.
And there's a choir. I'm like, someone is way too close to the choir mic.
Yeah.
And like, who
we
is
have
it?
kids
Like,
with that.
who's on?
We'll have like boundary
Yeah,
mics,
yeah.
and they're like, ah.
So we get backstage, and I'm radioing of like the sound guy. I'm like, what is up with the choir? Like, what is going on? I don't know, man. It's fine with me. So we go back. It happens again. And then we figure out it's like, oh, Tom's mic was
it's
unmuted.
His speaking mic.
Speaking mic, unmuted in your ear, so no one else could hear it.
Yours,
and
your
it was just
unique
blasting in my ear.
That would be so
like,
distracting.
It was fun. It's funny now. It was rough then. But
that is
technology.
Something I do not want to participate in. It's kind of funny. I want to start doing a thing, just take some back end work, but like plugging in the mix and recording it like some churches do, and like maybe putting a tiny little camera there. So like people who go, I would like to play keys for a worship church. But like, what are you hearing? So it's different for us as players, and we might have a differing opinion there because I'm not singing and talking and stuff. Right. There is, I really want to just go there and do my job.
Yeah.
I goof off kind of in rehearsal and stuff, and part of it's like you get the nerves out, you get comfortable, you rebound a little bit, and then you're kind of solid on what you're playing. But I will always turn off the ambient mics completely, do my mix for what allows me to do my job the best, and then I actually try to. And I know you talk about, go ahead and worship as well and all this stuff, but I try not to get more absorbed with just my own sound, with my own playing.
Right.
Because I love the instruments that I play.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I love them.
Yeah.
And so the texture of the violin, how close it gets to the bridge, and like, I can make it get a little warmer, and maybe I'll try shifting up here and sing how that sounds. But I really try to go, okay, click needs to be present. What instruments do I need to not be a big distraction or whatever?
Right. Yeah.
And I know some people do the exact opposites. Like they ride the ambience so that they can feel like they're in the room. Yeah. And then kind of work it backwards.
And there's two different kind of schools of thought on that. And that's one thing people may not know with that type of mix is that you have your own. Each band member has their own mix in their ears so they can adjust. Yeah. And there are also things
there's mine and then the wrong ones.
Yeah, exactly. But there's also elements that just the band hears and no one else does. So we'll have metronome going as we play, which you have to get used to. Yeah, definitely. A lot of songs have what are called multi-tracks, which are you have a guide saying verse 2, 3, 4, and you have to come in at the right time. And then you have some kind of, this is new in worship music in the last, I don't know, it's more standardized, I should say, in the last 5 years. It's been happening for a while, but when a band records the song, they'll provide multi-tracks, so you can get some of those ambient different sounds in with your version of the song as well through that. So, but people don't know that all that's happening in your ears, and that you kind of have your own mix. But the ambient thing too, like from my perspective, in leading, I need to hear all that stuff. I need to make sure
you're singing too.
I'm singing, and there's a bit of a.
If you're playing drums, you have your ambience up as much. Because it seems like that would.
When I'm leading, I want them up so I can get a feel of the room and just connect. Yeah. Which is different for like bass or something. Drums, I like having it just to hear. I love the reverb of drums when I play with ambience, but if click isn't slammed and you get off, everyone's in trouble. Yeah. So I try to make sure like click is that's foremost if I'm playing drums.
That's kind of funny because if I have things that I like as a musician, and it probably comes from more of a classical background where I like to hear the bow noise and like little things. I generally don't like tracks. I generally don't really like click, but I totally get that that's a more necessary one. Yeah. I generally don't like verb. I like it to be in the room. Okay. There's like a whole list of things that everyone's going to be crazy different on. And I see why we do them. I don't like auto-tune, any sort of, but then you can go like, well, do you like compression on the vocals? Do you like, there's so many things that you do it, but I like it to be, this part of me is being presented. I want it vastly unaltered. So that's kind of the artist side, I suppose. Yeah. But then in practice, I've tried some of those things. And I'm like, oh, this makes my life so much more difficult than if I have a skeleton to build on.
Yeah, and it goes back to
it's all personal preference.
Yeah, it's personal preference, and to me, it goes back to the reason, like what you're doing. And to me, it's if we were just a band performing, even that is different than leading in worship, and even how we use some of those different elements and the mix that I have, even and in some ways is a little different to be responsive to that. So when we implemented multi-tracks, because that's relatively new.
Yeah, it'd come up every once in a while.
Yeah, but what's surprising with that is it actually helped the band get tighter.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you have cues coming in, and people will. That's a debated thing too. Of like, does that
I'd
take
have
away?
an MD talkback mic.
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
I would just be
right. So different ways to do it. But.
And that is, but the switch is when I'm out in the with the audience, like worshiping from that side. I do like the tracks usually.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's also like I don't like that it's someone else's tracks. Like if I made the tracks, maybe I'd be super
And there's different opinions in our band on even that. So
I don't voice them because I actually don't care. It's like if you're going to eat a meal and it's like, hey, thank you for this. I was hungry. We're good. It's not like, well, but my favorite way to cook the green beans is with tiny pieces of bacon.
Right.
Yeah. So
exactly.
I mean, my thing is I want to show up and do my job, do a good job, and hopefully some people enjoy singing along.
Right.
I do like to see the kids out there, which my nephew's one of them. But there's a lot of them that are kind of like just hitting those drum beats.
Yeah, that's true.
I
Those are fun
love
to watch
it.
out. Yeah.
So I'm still looking at instruments. Cool, man.
Yes.
All right, well, we're gonna wrap this up.
Yeah.
But if you wrote a book, based on your life, what might the title be? That might be a little on the spot, but what information would you want in there?
So I actually have written 2 books. I don't know if you know this.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but the one was the foundation of Guitar Man, and it was actually laid out my method of how I teach guitar. Okay. And it's kind of based on the Nashville number system, which I love, and it's kind of the root of how I teach and how I prepare and how I communicate. And then the other one that I've written more recently is on what's a worship leader do all week. It's answering that question.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you give us a snapshot of take us through a day or a week of a worship leader?
Yeah. So the way I organize that content, and again, this came out of doing it for a long time, and everyone sees the tip of the iceberg of Sunday. Yeah. And of just knowing and the way my brain works too, I'm very process oriented and preparing and strategies and taking all these systems that I've kind of either developed from somewhere else or formed into a organized book. So it's almost how I think. It's almost an expression of getting it all out, and then turn that into a course as well. But so the
course for churches or worship leaders. So existing worship leaders.
Yeah. So that's worshipleaderacademy.com. That's where all that content and the book is. That's part of the membership for that.
Yeah, I knew you built that. I always thought that was super cool.
Yeah,
but I didn't know about the book part of it.
Yeah, so that's part of it. That's kind of it's a lot of the same info just in book form.
Yeah.
But the premise is that everyone sees Sunday, and then the joke is oh, you only work on Sundays, right?
Yeah.
Anyone in ministry. But underneath what happens on Sunday is leadership of 3 different categories. So you lead processes, which is strategy, vision alignment, which we talked about, with the elder document and the lead pastor, trying to figure out where you're going, planning ahead. I've got a big board with slots for each week to plan out. It's all that type of stuff.
I've taken a peek from time to time.
Yeah. Then the next kind of tier is creating volunteer culture, which we also talked about. How do you create a healthy volunteer culture where someone wants to be a part of it? Yeah. And they want to use their gifts. They want to be a part of that community. There's not this territorial competition which can happen in bands, but volunteer culture is really, really important.
That's because no one messes with my keyboard patches. Yeah. So we're
that's
good.
Right. That's right.
You can use them.
That's also what we talked about with the audition process. How do you? When do you say yes, and when do you say no? When do you say what? That's tough if you haven't done it. To have frameworks around. Okay, here's different models.
If you decide ahead of time, then it's not at this one human.
Yeah.
It's like, no, we've decided like this is.
Yeah, and here's how, create a panel and then have this type of system for that. And that's the people, or that's the partner side. And then the next tier up is leading people in worship. So you have processes, partners, people.
Yeah.
That's the some of the uniqueness, which we've also talked about. That's a good way to wrap everything up. But, to ask, like, who's in the room? And is it high schoolers or is it a 90-year-olds and middle schoolers? And how do you lead those people musically in worship? And the key that you choose for a song, can people sing it or not?
Yeah.
Or the flow of the service, and songs that are calls to worship moving into kind of a concentrated, ascriptive to God worship versus responsive worship after a message that's themed.
Yeah.
Communion, baptism.
And I've seen you get a lot deeper into that's definitely one thing that went totally off my radar. I would be like the energy of a song, or even the way, some of the chord progressions might be really easy to plug into. People can sing along with an easy melody versus something that's kind of more fun for the musicians, but it's not as intuitive. But I had never before talking to you thought about maybe the theology of a song and how it matches with the message, really. Right. It was more just, I viewed worship largely as like a crowd warm-up.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Right. And what's so funny biblically is it's the opposite. So worship ministry is the only ministry that doesn't expire on earth. So it's the one that continues in heaven. So we will all worship when we're in heaven. The ministries of groups and women's ministry and men's ministry and even preaching, their time is here now on earth, and worship keeps going. So John Piper has a quote that says, missions exists because worship doesn't. So it's, the response to what God has done for us is worship. So in the Sunday setting, really this is one of those side benefits. It can warm you up. It can get you ready for the message, but that's an offshoot benefit, which is great.
Yeah.
It's not the point. The point really at its core is to respond and ascribe worth through music. So that's another thing too with the multi-generational context. When you have a song that ties in theologically or helps reinforce, kind of puts an exclamation point on the sermon, that ministers to people of all ages, almost regardless of what the music does. Yeah. And which I love getting that feedback of, that helped me either like helped it land or help wrap it all up, or help me express this particular thing that we just learned like just now. Like that to me is where it really connects. Yeah. And there's emotion sometimes, not just the music, but in the theology resonating through the music, which I think I love being a part of that and getting that feedback. It wasn't like that song was awesome. It was like the content of the song helped kind of release an expression. Are you often surprised by what songs or what part of the service, if people come up and talk to you, like what was really impactful? Sometimes. The time I remember being surprised the most is when we had a bluegrass week, and it was one of the early ones, which is now it's like it. How many people love it? 6 or 7? Something like that. We have like 1 or 2 a year, but at first I was like nervous because I don't want this to be like hillbilly, where it's like just kind of I am fine with that. Where it was just like a mockery of, I don't know. I was just like really like hesitant. A caricature. A caricature. So we did it, and it was great. And then at the end, I was kind of like, it was fun, right? And that was almost what I was nervous about. It's like, I don't want this to just be a fun time. And we leave, and that was fun. Yeah. But we did it, and then afterwards, an older gentleman came up to the stage, like in tears, and said, "Thank you so much for doing this." And then he kind of shared how it brought back a lot from his childhood. Yeah. And it's like, then I realized, like, man, there's a powerful. It wasn't entertainment. To him. Yeah. It brought back. It was like a home cooked meal. It's like it brought back a lot of connection that he had, some maybe spiritual things that were going on, or his family back. Like music tied that in a special way in the context of a worship service. To me, that I wasn't expecting that. That is by far my favorite. Because people, out of politeness, if they make eye contact with you, they're going to shoot you a compliment or something. Yeah. And
And then there are some things that we do that take some skill and practice, and people will recognize that. But it's when there's a specific, like, it's unique to them.
Right.
So it's like,
exactly.
Hey, you sounded good up there. Boy, you can really play that violin, huh?
Right.
I really enjoyed your playing. Those are all cool. That's great. If I get, I guess, too many of those, it can feel a little bit like, am I pushing like a little bit too much out there? But in general, I like feedback. I'm a words of affirmation person. That is going to actually encourage me to, when no one's looking, like, keep practicing my craft, because it's like it's worth something other than just to me.
Yeah.
But when someone is so specific, and they're like, my grandfather played violin and he played that exact song, and it's awesome. Like something there, I'm like,
connects.
Yes. Like, that's what I want.
Awesome.
But you can't predict those.
Right.
And you can't design anything for
and
it.
that's the consistent. You're consistent for a long
Send out a
period
survey
of
to
time.
the church. Does anyone's grandpa ever play any particular song on the steel guitar?
Well, here's another example too, and I don't even know that the band knows about this, but part of Worship Arts is we do baptism video filmings where people film their testimony before they get baptized. And one of those, this was years ago, but kind of a young lady sharing her testimony, and she said it was just during one of the songs, and I don't even know which song it was.
Oh,
she's like, right? But it just hit her like overwhelmingly, like something landed differently spiritually in that moment that affected her. In that's when the Lord chose to speak to her through those lyrics, or that time and place and the music. That was it for her, and that started her process of becoming a Christian, started her testimony. But that was the kind of a moment in time that she'll never forget. And it's like when we did it, we were out there doing our thing. You don't see that.
You don't
know.
Yeah.
But that's that type of thing.
I mean, we
is
see
happening.
probably the biggest thing that's a mass of people when they sing along. It's like the best thing ever.
Oh yeah, that's the point.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean it's that engagement. I mean, and I kind of joke around, like, if we just did, people have different opinions on hymns and praise songs and the band, all that. Like, to me, people singing like that's it. It's not doing for me. It's not doing the licks or the type of music. It's engagement, and we do everything we can to have undistracted excellence so people will engage. But we can't make them. We can't make them sing. We can't make them engage. But the times when they do, when there's that kind of resonance, and
we could, because I've been in these churches, we could hammer them with enough guilt to get them to sing.
Which that's
I've been there.
And that's a noise, but it's not probably a joyful noise. It's just a
being
noise.
held captive.
Yeah, you don't want to, just like giving shouldn't be, don't be compelled, but give with a joyful heart. The same is true with, I think, engaging in worship. When you're responding to who God is and what He has done, that's an overflow.
I do
joy.
like when you say stuff like that, though. I do like that reminder, because sometimes people, they just got a lot going on in their heads.
Yeah.
And so just a little bit of dialogue sometimes is like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I'm here. Let's sing. Like, that's good.
And it's important too not to judge, to be careful not to judge a congregation based on what you're observing.
You could literally, like, someone decides not to take their life, but they're just here.
Yeah. Man, you
don't know. And you might be like, man, come on, get into it, or whatever.
There's Jamie and I were talking after rehearsals Wednesday night, 7 or 8, and this guy was just walking toward us. We didn't know who he was, or he was just circling the building.
Yeah.
And we're like, hey, can we help you? And he said, I was like, you the guy that leads the music? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, cool. It's like, I just moved here. I'm walking around the building. He said, I'm getting some exercise. I've been sober for like a week or two, and I thought this would be a better use of time to walk around the church than to drink. And he said, I've come to your services a couple times, and he's like, I just cry all the way through the music and the worship. And they were like, that's awesome. Good to meet you. We got to know him, got his phone number, and like, hey, he's like, I want to get plugged in. I don't know people. I'm from Florida.
Yeah.
And we have a recovery ministry that we got him plugged into, and he got to know.
Really good recovery ministry.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that type of thing.
That is one of the things, like, I don't think you're going to 100% theologically agree with every word someone says at your home church or small groups or whatever, which is fine because that's part of the process. But the fact that Grace has so many, and it takes so much planning and resources to continuously have, here's a place for people that are at this stage of life. Right. Here's a place for this. Here's a place for this. That is like, I know other churches do it too, but not the ones that I grew up in as much. And I'm like, yes, like right here in the community. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I think those types of things of seeing lives changed is fuel for the staff to keep going and to keep ministering and to be faithful. I think for the worship team to be faithful in what we do, because we don't always see the direct result, but we know it's happening and we know God is working through it. And so it's just being faithful to continue on and to let God, when I pray, I try to say, God, work as you would, as you will. Like this is your time and we're here to serve and work in and through us to minister how you want.
There's been times when this was a long time ago. I think it was the first or second time we deviated a bit from the kind of full band thing with Sam and Jody. They sang together. Okay. Right? And their vocal styles were a little bit significantly different than yours. Yeah. Right? And I just loved it. Yeah. I was sitting there and I had absolute goosebumps.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Jody had such a beautiful voice, and then I hadn't heard Sam sing much, and it was like him and his piano. Yeah. Okay? But I know, just because I've playing a while, it doesn't hit the same if they do that every week.
Right. That's true.
And you can't predict it, but like whatever song, if people want us to do these latest and greatest ones, and I do it. I'm like, it'd be sweet if we could do this. Yeah, yeah. That would probably get attention once. Like people might, whoa, okay. I guess this is a little different Sunday morning, kind of like bluegrass does. Right. But they don't understand if we did that also every week, and that was the only thing. That'd be a tough little carrot to chase. Right. You run out, then you have to just like Taylor Swift around the building, you know what I mean? Like on a big thing.
It doesn't end.
Yeah.
And
rocket ships.
And there are churches that is their carrot they're chasing. And like it just you have to keep chasing.
And I actually have a ton of respect for those churches in terms of the amount of just energy it takes to get a production team that can pull that off.
Right.
But I'm not gonna probably.
There's a new word I've learned this year called contemporaneity.
Okay.
And that means that what's current or what's new is basically better. So if it's new, it's better.
Yeah.
Or even if you zoom out a little bit, kind of my experience on earth, I'm the expert because everything I've seen is this.
Yeah.
This is normal. It's like, well, especially in the church, you've got a long history of what's happened musically and how God has worked, and we've received the baton and we're going to pass it. Like this is just a moment in time. But to speak to that, I think that kind of the chasing the carrot thing can be, it's just something to watch out for because of, like we're saying, the subjective nature of music and what people like, and that's what they think it should be, or others think it should be this because I like this. I get that a lot.
I like somewhere between that and just getting lazy. Because if I'm playing, and we've had a pretty good stretch where I've probably been playing like maybe 3 weekends a month for a good bit. And I love playing. Yeah. But if I were to play the exact same kind of set over and over, I would probably kind of largely disconnect. It'd be so hard not to.
Yeah.
If I'm hitting that same, like we do Build My Life every single service and stuff. Yeah. So it's like anywhere in the middle there.
Yeah. And that's where it takes kind of discretion and I think creativity is good. Because
I did like our worship night a lot.
Yeah.
That was cool. Mm-hmm. Had some people there and a lot of people even at Blair Academy. I won't know they're at Grace.
Oh, really?
Sometimes we've had families here. We have a ton of families here at Grace.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even make the connection. They'll come in for an open house because they just Googled music lessons. They're like, hey, you're the...
Yeah, people ask me too, where can I get lessons, and I'll send them on.
Yes. But they'll come in, and all of a sudden we'll do bluegrass. It's like, hey, really enjoy what you did on Sunday.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
what?
You were there? Yeah, we've been there.
Yeah, that's funny.
2 years.
Wow.
Good job.
Yeah.
I know. I'm always like coming up, where do you sit? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you sit in the seat, right? Yeah, that's right.
That's perfect. Well, awesome, man. Thanks for sitting down.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for the instruments bit, sharing your stories, and working hard in a career of music and leadership and all the other stuff.
Thank you for this is the first podcast I've ever been a part of.
Boom.
And
not be the last.
Thank you for being a stellar 5-star volunteer and 5 stars. Yeah,
I don't know.
I've been 5 stars.
Ever since the birth of my first child, my tardiness has drastically increased.
That happens. That happens.
I do try through all the shame, and this is a good lesson for you students. I tell all my teachers, I tell any musicians I hire, it's like you got to be on time, you got to be early. I don't care how good you are. I have to be able to depend on you, or it causes me so much trouble. And then I turn right around, and we have to be at rehearsal at like 7:15 in the morning.
Yeah.
Not a great morning person.
Yeah.
But I wake up, I get up, and then it's all of a sudden like, you know what? Maybe I'll grab a shower this morning instead of the night before. Like you go down to feed the dog, and they've like made a mess in their crate.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't want to leave this for Emily. It's not intentionally disrespectful, but I think it's 100%. I try to, if I'm late, I just go ahead and text him I'm leaving and I hate it because sometimes you look and you see the ones up above. But it's like, I want you to know that like I am coming. I do. I'm just going to be like a few minutes late, and it's definitely not practicing what I preach. But even through the shame, people, if you don't cause the unknown, where is this person? At least go, Daniel's going to be late.
Yeah.
Instead of, we don't know where Daniel is.
For me, it's good to know. Just know. I just know that you're on the way. And
Don and I had this talk before where we actually said the volunteer world can be not as indicative of the real world because you will get fired from a professional gig for not doing your job. And so, there's definitely times where I'm like, would I fire me? But I try to be like, hey, my wife gets home from work here, and I will come straight to rehearsal, but this is the time I'm likely to
that's
arrive.
life, and that's part of, again.
But you still walk in last, and everyone knows.
Yeah. Well, that's part of having a church family, and
so I'm glad you have that hybrid model.
Yeah, that's right.
That works really well. Awesome, man. Well, we'll play some music soon. Thank you very much.
All right, absolutely.
Hey, we tried to do a worship arts camp at Blair Academy last year.
Yeah.
It's hugely popular until it came time to sign up, and then only one person did. But maybe we'll come through and talk to you guys and let them take a tour or something one day. All right, this has been Blair on the Air, the podcast. See you next time.